What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. It has been a while. We took a little break during the holiday season, and then things, as you might have guessed, if you've been following along, have gotten a little bit busy on the Patriots beat. But we are back this week. We've got a great guest. James White is with us, Patriots legend, recent keeper of the light, just ringing the hell out of that bell up on the light tower at Gillette Stadium for the regular season finale, a game that was incredibly forgettable, an environment to me that was incredibly forgettable when it comes to the coach's potential goodbye. And that's where we're going to start before we get to James White, is that potential goodbye between the Patriots and Bill Belichick. What is going to happen with Bill Belichick? What is next? Here we're on the Next Pats podcast. What is next for the head coaching position in Foxborough? And the expectation is, I can tell you for those in the building, that Bill Belichick will no longer be the New England Patriots head coach. And that time is coming soon. And that decision has been made. It's a matter of time before it's made clear to the rest of us that that is what the Patriots will be doing for next season. Now, the timeline is unclear based on conversations I've had with people close to the situation. It's a complicated dance to break up a 24-year marriage. Contracts obviously involved. Specific language in those contracts can get complicated. Belichick was the football operation for a generation. So really difficult just to say goodbye, thank you, have a nice life. We'll see you for the statue ceremony in a couple of years, and we'll see you in Canton for your inevitable Hall of Fame induction. There are going to be a lot of different wrinkles here when it comes to the Patriots and Bill Belichick breaking up. And one of those could be that the Kraft family tries to trade Bill Belichick. That could take some time. Maybe you'd even wait until the end of the wild card round to see what other head coaching positions become available, to see what Bill Belichick's market ultimately will be. But he is still, as things stand today, an asset for the New England Patriots. He's under contract, and he seems to be in demand. What I've been told by people close to both sides, really close to Bill Belichick, close to the Krafts, is that, as you might guess, Bill Belichick would be reluctant to be traded. Quote, he'll be spiteful, is what one source told me. That said, if he has that market and he is under contract, which we know he is because he acknowledged it, and we knew it ahead of time. I actually asked him about it following the game on Sunday against the Jets. We understand that you're under contract. Would you like to be back and finish out your contract here in New England? And he really didn't answer the question, but at least he acknowledged that he is under contract for 2024. It would behoove the Patriots to get what they can for him. They need all the assets they can get. They need all the draft capital they can get to try to rebuild a roster that has been decimated over the course of the last couple of years in terms of talent. So all of that could take time. Now, if you're asking me what's next for Bill Belichick specifically, I got my eyes on Atlanta. I believe the interest from Atlanta is real in Bill Belichick. I believe there will be real interest from Bill Belichick in Atlanta. That job makes all the sense in the world for me. You have good ownership in Arthur Blank. I'm told he's been very open about the urgency he feels to win now because of his age. And you might have the ability, if you're Blank, to have a plug-and-play system on the sidelines starting in just a couple of months if you can land Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick, for instance, brings along Josh McDaniels. He brings along a handful of holdovers from New England. That would have to be enticing for Blank, who just tried out first-year head coach Arthur Smith. Before that, it was interim head coach Raheem Morris, young guy. Before that, it was first-time head coach Dan Quinn. Before that, it was first-time head coach Mike Smith. You get somebody in here with an overwhelming amount of experience in Bill Belichick. You're trying something new in that way, and you're trying to win right now. And it's a nice roster if you get the right quarterback. They are a piece away, and it's the most difficult piece to find. But what if I told you Kirk Cousins is available? Maybe you knew that already because you're looking at quarterbacks for the Patriots. I know he's coming off an injury, but he's certainly capable. Is he Super Bowl caliber? I'm not sure. He's playoff caliber, though. And I still would feel that way, even with him coming off an injury, especially if he ends up in Atlanta in a dome same environment that he's been in Minnesota for the last few years. He also has Atlanta connections. His wife is from the area, supposedly loves Atlanta. So if you're Arthur Blank, are you not looking at this and saying, I'm willing to pay Kirk Cousins? I'm willing to bring on Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels. I've already got Bijan Robinson. I've got a good offensive line. I had a top 10 scoring defense in 2023. This could work. And you could sell it to Bill Belichick. You're in a bad division. You're just down the road from Jupiter, Florida. If you're looking at that Don Shula record, and I'm Bill Belichick, I am highly intrigued by the Atlanta possibility. Okay. How about Mike Vrabel? That obviously is the news of the week. He's been fired by the Tennessee Titans. Is he not suddenly the number one candidate to replace Bill Belichick when the Patriots and Bill Belichick end up parting ways? Let's talk about two different facets to this story. Vrabel to the Patriots. Possibly. First, let's talk about why it could happen. Then I'll tell you why I don't think it will happen. Why it could happen is there's obviously a pre-existing relationship there between Mike Vrabel and the Kraft family. That, to me, matters. People who know the Krafts have told me many times over, they would be stunned if the Krafts went outside the family, so to speak, with both their head coach or general manager jobs when they're going to be replacing those. The relationships matter. They're not just going to meet someone over the course of an interview process during the NFL's postseason or soon thereafter or as it's finishing up and give the keys to someone they barely know. It seems highly, highly unlikely that they would do that, is what I'm told. So Vrabel checks that box. Seems to have a great relationship with the Krafts. A lot of mutual respect there between the two sides. Obviously, Mike Vrabel was just back in October, inducted to the Patriots Hall of Fame. He watched the game from the Krafts box. He's on the field at halftime with a red jacket on, talking about how we've got a game to go win. What? As he's head coach of another NFL franchise, talking to Patriots fans and getting them riled up. So that's reason number one why it could happen, why he would be a fit. And of course, Patriots fans would eat it up. He would be an easy sell job for the Krafts. Very little work to be done there. They know who he is. They've seen him succeed on the field. They've seen him succeed on the sidelines. He ended Tom Brady's Patriots career. The end of the 2019 season, early 2020. Logan Ryan, pick six, end of the game. Everybody remembers it. He's gotten a lot out of those rosters too. He's a talented coach. One of the better coaches in the league, in my opinion. He was coach of the year just a couple of years ago. And what he's done with some bad rosters and some bad breaks in terms of injury has been really impressive. And one more reason as to why it could happen, why he would be a fit here in New England, is he would be a change. Going from Bill Belichick to Mike Vrabel, though you could say that Vrabel is part of the Bill Belichick coaching tree, I might argue that because he never spent time on Bill Belichick's staff. He just played for him. Now, clearly, his football life was in many ways, or a chunk of it at least, shaped by Bill Belichick. So he's been influenced by him. There's no question. But he would be different. Very different personalities, very different ability to relate to human beings. I think he would be, Vrabel would be, though old school in some ways, I think he still would be a player's coach. You really have to be in today's game. I'm not even sure we should be calling them players' coaches anymore because they're all players' coaches. Maybe outside of a couple of examples, one of whom might have just spent the last 24 years here in New England. So that's why it could happen. That's why Mike Vrabel is a fit. A lot of obvious reasons there. And I think if the Krafts decided to go that route, I think it would be a good decision. But here's why I don't think they will go that route. Number one, while I do think it'd be a good hire, it's not a perfect hire. Does Mike Vrabel want the kind of collaborative approach that the Krafts have clearly desired over the course of the last few years? Head coach and front office. How many times have you heard that word? Collaboration, collaborative process, especially when it comes to the draft. They've been looking for better results. They haven't necessarily gotten them. The Christian Gonzalez pick, notwithstanding. We'll see how that one ends up working out. It looks like that was a pretty good one. But they have been hammering that theme for years. now in New England. And I wonder how willing Mike Vrabel will be to collaborate at his next job. I think he's tried to do that over the last handful of years in Tennessee. And those relationships, not that I'm there, not that I'm covering that team, but those relationships with Rand Carthon and John Robinson seem to have gone a little bit sideways. So in Mike Vrabel, would they be hiring someone who desires to be, if not laid out bare by the language of his contract, if not laid out by whatever his title is here in New England? Is he looking to essentially be head coach and general manager? Is that the case? Because he can make the argument he's been saddled with bad rosters in Tennessee. And that's the reason he doesn't have a job anymore. That's the reason why his overall record in his time there is just only slightly above 500 and not significantly above 500. Would he have, for instance, signed Tom Brady and not Ryan Tannehill? How much of that was his call? I remember asking him at the Combine in 2020 if he felt as though Tom Brady was a great fit. And he turned the question right back around on me. This is part of the reason why we, of course, in the media would love to see Mike Vrabel here. He would be a lot of fun to cover. I don't doubt that. And just the interactions that I've had with him, whether it's at owners' meetings, Combine, conference calls when he is about to play the Patriots, we've had some good back and forths. And he asked me that day, well, why do you think Tom Brady would be a good fit? Oh, I have relationships with a lot of guys that are about to be free agents. And, oh, by the way, Tom Brady's still under contract. So it's not right for me to talk about a player who's under contract. It's a great exchange. Some follow-ups that he didn't want to hear, but he was quick with some retorts that made it clear how he was feeling about the topic. We had a good time. It would be a good time for those of us in the media if Mike Vrabel is the head coach, but that's not what matters, and that's not what the Crafts care about. What matters would be, in my opinion, how would he interact with whoever is running the front office? And would they be comfortable giving him whatever power he wants? And I don't know. This is just me reading it from afar. But if he wants more power there, that's something that they're interested in. Or do they want to make somebody their true general manager who has final say on the 53-man roster, and they just want the head coach to be the head coach? Is that something that Vrabel's even interested in? There is, I think, some question about his background. He is a defensive guy. Now, I see him as a true head coach. He's not an offensive or defensive play caller, but he's obviously a defensive coach. That's how he came up. He's obviously a defensive player. And while he has made the most of some bad rosters, he has had some rough defenses over the course of the last few years. The Titans have been bottom 5 in EPA per play in 2 of the last 4 years. And just for comparison's sake, here's the Patriots rankings in EPA per play defensively over the last 4 years. They were 8th this year. They were 3rd last year. They were 4th in 2021. And they were all the way down at 22nd in 2020. Still not bottom 5, though. I mean, they have had some real tanky performances on the defensive side of the ball. So that would be the one real X's and O's question I would have for Vrabel, aside from the personnel choices, especially the ones they've made at quarterback. How influential was he in making those decisions? I would love to know. And what's gone on with the defenses when they have been at the bottom of the league? Because it's not like they haven't had some really good players. Kevin Byard, one of the best safeties in the league when he was in Tennessee. Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best defensive tackles in the league when he's healthy, when he's been in Tennessee. They've had some talent on that side of the ball. Bottom 5 in the league. That's borderline inexcusable for a defensive head coach, I would say. Now, again, it wouldn't prevent me from hiring the guy, but it would be a question that I would have if I'm Robert Kraft. Here's the last reason I think it might be the most important, why I don't think Mike Vrabel will be the next Patriots head coach. Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft have been preparing for this for a while. And with the late addition, the unexpected addition, in some places, I'm sure, of Mike Vrabel to the list of prospective future head coaches in New England, forced the Krafts to change course. And my guess would be no. And we know what course they were on because they let us know last offseason. They released a statement saying not only were they going to be hiring a new offensive coordinator, but that they were also working on an extension. They hadn't even signed the thing yet, but they were working on an extension with Jerod Mayo. They made it very clear just how much they valued him. It was not a coincidence that Jerod Mayo was a candidate to be interviewed elsewhere for head coaching opportunities in the NFL when that statement was released. Jerod Mayo said no to the interviews he was offered, and he was coming back to New England. Robert Kraft has also been very open about the fact that he views Jerod Mayo as head coaching material. If that's the path, does Mike Vrabel's sudden availability force the Krafts to veer off path and choose another? You could make the argument that it should, that they should not be stuck in what they previously considered their best option when another option maybe unexpectedly makes itself available. I understand that argument. I'm just not sure the Krafts would subscribe to it. We know Robert Kraft considers himself the custodian for this organization. It's obviously his team. It's his family's team, but he also understands it's the region's team. And he'd be happy to tell you about all the games that he went to and sat on the metal benches and suffered through hard times as a Patriots fan. He understands what it's like to be in those seats. Again, he'll let us know. So would he go into a period of transition like this one, even if the timeline has been bumped up, even if he didn't think that transition would happen until 2024, because he never thought his team would be as bad as it was in 2023. So even if the timeline has been expedited, it would be a mistake to assume that he hasn't been planning for this moment for a long period of time. I would say even going back to before the release of that statement. The release of the statement just let everybody know where they stood. But the planning has been ongoing. They've had a great head coach. Their head coach is into his 70s now. My guess is they assume, even understanding how proud Bill Belichick is and how successful he was not too long ago with this organization, that 2018 Super Bowl ring is still fresh. But my belief is that the Krafts would say even Bill Belichick should understand that we have to have contingency plans in place. I believe they've had a contingency plan in place for some time now, and I don't believe, it is my strongly held belief, that Mike Vrabel would move them off their spot. So that's what I think is next when it comes to the Patriots coaching situation. But let's ask somebody who's been in the building, somebody who's worked with Bill Belichick, somebody who's played against Mike Vrabel, somebody who has played alongside of and underneath a staff that included Jerod Mayo. Let's get James White, the legend, into Next Pats. Let's talk to him right now. All right, there he is, the legend, James White. Thanks for being back with us on Next Pats here, bud.
Hey, appreciate you having me. Always good to talk.
All right, so we have to start with some coaching questions here because it's the talk of the town. Everybody's wondering what's going to happen with Bill Belichick. It seems as though there is a likelihood, James, that Bill Belichick and the Patriots end up parting ways. What I wanted to ask you is, somebody who obviously spent your whole career playing for Bill Belichick, you're in captains meetings with Bill Belichick, you've seen everything he has to offer as a head coach. If the Patriots do end up parting with him, what's the biggest thing they'll miss?
Ooh, I think the structure, the genius behind him, the discipline. I mean, just everything he's built over his entire career there in New England. Just, you would never really understand. I'm sure you probably have understand him because you've reported for us for quite some time. But just being in that building and you just can't, I don't even know how to describe it. You only know what you're getting when you're in that building. Not everybody can handle it. Not everybody can take it. If you trust in what he's doing, it ends up being a beautiful, masterpiece. But I think it's just, he's the greatest coach of all time. The preparation, from a day-to-day basis, there's nothing else like it. It's gonna be annoying. It's gonna be tough. But when Sunday rolls around and everything's clicking and things are working exactly the way that he described it, the entire week, then you're like, okay, it all makes sense. And then you start it back all over again Monday, Wednesday, and you crank the week through. So I think that'll be the biggest part that's missing. And I said I don't know anything other than Bill Belichick, so I don't know what other coaches are like, and I'm sure plenty of coaches that have come from his tree try and implement a similar type structure. And I know the game's changed. There's a lot of younger coaches. It's a lot about having fun. Not letting guys not beating up on the guys too much, however you want to call it. But he's different than the modern age coach, and who knows what direction they may try and go.
It's so interesting because I look at guys like you, Julian Edelman, Rob Ninkovich, Tom Brady, obviously. They're some of the best players in team history, and guys that were also accepting of that style of coaching,
Yep.
right? Bill Belichick himself would acknowledge to you guys, it's a hard place to work, whether you're a player or coach,
Oh yeah.
right? Do you think his style can still work in today's era with the athletes obviously getting younger and younger every single year? You played long enough,
Yep.
James. You probably saw firsthand just
Yeah.
how much it changed.
Yeah.
Can
I
you still
think
work that way as a head coach?
Yeah, I think it still can work. I think it's all about that's why you have all these interviews, the combine, pre-draft interviews, just finding the right guys that you feel like, instills your culture and can handle your type of coaching, or who you think you can, develop into being a great player who can already come into your building and is going to be a great player right away. I think it definitely can work. It's all about just having the right fit. I think that's what, with any coaching staff and any coaching style. There's some guys where if you're very lackadaisical, they may not develop into much because they need somebody to, be on them constantly and figure out ways to motivate them throughout the week and figure out ways for them to get better. So I think that gets lost, in the shuffle a lot of times, and then we get caught up in 40 times and shuttle times and all that, and just think, oh, this guy played great in college. He ran a 4.3. He's going to be a great NFL player. It's like, no, he needs to be, in the right system. Have a coach that's going to motivate him. Be in the right scheme. There's a lot of other factors, that go into that, and I'm sure, there's a lot that goes into a player going out there having success on Sundays.
No question. And here on Next Pats, we love talking about the draft. One of the things that I've come to learn over the years, talking to scouts that are here in New England, if you can't take hard coaching and they find that out as a college player,
Oh yeah.
if you can't handle that, you might not even be on their board. It doesn't matter if you're an incredibly talented player. So now I wonder if the Patriots end up going in a different direction and they hire a coach who just became available today, if that needs to take hard coaching label will still apply, James, Mike Vrabel, who's been in the league now for a few years. And your friend Dion Lewis ended up playing for Mike
Yeah.
Vrabel for a little while in Nashville, has been fired by the Titans. He is available now. There are obvious connections between Vrabel and the Patriots. He was just back for his Patriots Hall of Fame induction in October. Seemed to be really feeling the vibe there at halftime.
Is
I don't know if you
watching
remember
the
this.
game? Yeah.
Watching the game with the owner, and at halftime telling the fans, we got a game we've got to go win. Saying we, like he's a head coach of another NFL team, and he's talking about how we need to go win a game. Really interesting. Do you see him as a fit? And what do you know about him as a head coach based on, some of the guys that you knew who played for him there in Tennessee?
I think he would be a great fit. Obviously, if they move on from Bill Belichick, just similar coaching style. Obviously, a younger version. He's energetic. He talks his stuff. I mean, I've competed against him as a defensive coordinator or linebacker coach when he's with the Texans, and then all the way to when he was a head coach, at Tennessee. Joint practices. Him coaching up his defense. Tom may throw a pick or throw an interception in practice or incompletion, whatever it is. And he's talking stuff to Tom. Getting his defense riled up. He's a very energetic guy, enthusiastic guy, obviously knows the game very well, going to coach the guys very hard. And obviously he played under Bill Belichick. His, you know, I'm sure he has, I've never been coached by him. I'm sure he has a similar type coaching style, and I'm sure the guys will love him. He's had a lot of success in his league, having the Titans in the playoffs almost every single season with even not some of the greatest rosters. Every year you may think the Titans, weren't going to be that great, and they find a way to get into the playoffs, beating us in 2019, knocking us out of the playoffs. So I think he's done a great job, throughout his NFL career as a coach. I don't know why he was fired. I thought that was sort of strange, but the timing is pretty right. They decided to move on from Bill.
Coach of the year just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Is there a word that you would use, James, to describe his defenses that you think is sort of a reflection of who he is as a coach?
I say aggressive. I know I'm not gonna say he's an aggressive person, but like it doesn't mean blitzing all over the place and things of that nature. They're gonna beat you to the punch. They're gonna defeat blocks. They're gonna make it tough for you to gain every single yard. And they're gonna play sound as well, whether they have a ton of all pros or undrafted guys who are just activated on that Sunday. They're gonna play hard and they're gonna be aggressive. And I think that's his coaching style. He's a defensive coach, and you could tell their defense, wears, his brand, on their sleeve, and they're going to go out there and play hard for him.
Another former linebacker, another former Patriot, relatively young guy. He's in his mid-30s. Some people might call it late 30s. We'll call it mid-30s to be polite. Jerod Mayo. He seems to be somebody who's got a lot of buzz as well as a potential candidate should the Patriots job open up. He's a former teammate of yours, but he's also coached while you were on the roster. What did he take from his playing days into his coaching career from what you could see? Obviously, you're an offensive guy and he was on the other side of the ball, but I'm sure you got a taste of what he was like as a coach.
Yeah, I caught Mayo, toward the back half, it's his career, back end of his career, but just a very technically sound, well coached, a leader in the locker room, very vocal, very, very vocal, very loud, which is a good thing, whether it's 7 a.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. He was always loud, but he's a good football player, and he's been a great coach, being around him, in the same team, same locker room as him. So has the linebackers prepared, ready to go. Obviously, he has his hand in, getting the defense prepared and ready to go as well. And he's just a smart football player, a smart coach. And obviously he knows the game. He knows how to get guys going, knows, ways to get guys prepared. I think obviously he'd be another great fit, play within the organization. I think that all plays a factor if they move on from Bill. I'm sure Kraft would love to bring in somebody who's been a part, of the organization as a player, as a coach, or however. I think it'd be very hard to get somebody from, outside, coming in. I know the locker room's a little bit different now. We don't have many of the guys that have played there for 6+ years or 8+ years and whatnot. Slater most likely retiring. David, like one of the last guys in there who's been there for quite some time. Him and Jonathan Jones. So it'd be hard for me to see bringing an outside candidate in there taking over. I think it'll be a very different feel within the locker room.
How different is he from Bill Belichick?
He's very different. I think Bill's a little bit more laid back, reserved. Aside from like his coaching style, when he wants to get something his point across, he's gonna be vocal, he's gonna be loud. And that thing, Mayo is loud. Probably 90% of the time he's energetic. But it's the same. You can have your own style of coaching, but the way they prepare is gonna be exactly the same. I mean, who knows what Mayo will actually try and implement if he is the head guy? But I'm sure the preparation is going to be the same. It'll be, on Wednesday, you're going to do early downs. On Thursday, you're going to work on third downs. On Friday, you're going to work on reds. I'm sure the setup and the structure is going to be very similar. I don't know how he would handle that situation, but I'm sure if they think he is a great candidate, I'm sure maybe Kraft and him have had a conversation of what it would look like for him, or whenever they do try and have that conversation. That's all things that I'm sure that's what you talk about in those head coaching interviews.
Be so fascinating. Obviously, there's so many more responsibilities on your plate when you go from assistant coach to head coach, and just how someone with his personality would handle those things, I think would be really interesting. Obviously, has that varied background where he spent some time in business. He spent some time with us on the media side. So it'd be really interesting if and when that opportunity pops up for Jerod. James, last thing I wanted to ask you is about the draft. Again, this podcast, we love talking about the draft. You did phenomenal work this year for the Big Ten Network. The Patriots right now have the 3rd overall pick. There are a lot of people who are assuming the first 2 picks off the board will be quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some wheeling and dealing that happens there. Maybe the first 2 teams need a quarterback. Maybe they don't. But Caleb Williams and Drake May have for a long time been considered sort of 1 and 2. Marvin Harrison is a guy, obviously, that you covered as part of the Big Ten out of Ohio State. Would he be your choice if I make you Patriots GM? They could be looking for GM, James. So so this is like a little bit of an interview right now. Okay.
I said on Twitter, I always wanted to be a GM, but that most definitely would be the pick for me. Getting to watch that guy, every Saturday, whatever day they played on. I know Big Ten, and at the Big Ten Network, it's like a running joke for me. We do like Saturday standouts. Probably every week, I was right there with like Marvin Harrison Jr. That was my fallback plan if I couldn't find anybody else, because you knew he was going to have a great game, every single week. He's just a technician. He's reserved. Obviously, his dad, has been through one of the greatest receivers to play the game, especially for the Colts, organization, just silky smooth, can run routes, contested catches, run after the catch. He has the size, the speed, like is everything you want, in a pro receiver. I know there's other talented guys in this draft. I just feel like for me, he's the most well-polished, and I just feel like he's for sure a guy who's going to come in and make an immediate impact. And there's a lot of talented quarterbacks in this draft too. So I don't think you necessarily have to, draft a guy, in the first round, or you could draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. If another guy like say Jaden Daniels doesn't get drafted in the top 20 and you want to trade back into the back half of the first round, you may be able to get him, or Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix. There's a lot of talented guys if you decide to go that route and get a playmaker first, because obviously we need some playmakers on the outside. And I think if you go out and get Caleb Williams, maybe those great maybe impact receivers that are in the first round, maybe you're not able to get any of those guys. Not to say any of those guys in the second, third, fourth round won't come in and make an impact. I was a fourth rounder. Man, I didn't make an impact my first year, and we saw what Pop Douglas did for him this year. So those later rounds are important as well. But I just think that kid is one of the best players, best receivers we've seen in some time.
Who's he remind you of, James?
Well, it's tough. it's very tough to say, because like he has the size, he has the speed. Yeah, I don't know who's the exact.
Give us a crazy comparison. Don't be shy. So I'll tell you the one that I've seen from a few different places is AJ Green.
Yeah, say like AJ Green, like Mike Evans type, some like along those lines. Just just very smooth. Nothing like overly flashy, but you're gonna have 1,200 yards every year, 10 touchdowns, and that's what you want as a franchise receiver.
Oh, you would sign up for that. You look at Mike 100%. Evans' career numbers,
yeah.
Another ridiculous year this year with Baker Mayfield. I mean, that guy would be, if he was the number 3 overall pick the year he was drafted, you'd look back at the numbers he's put up with. I know he played with the greatest of all time for a couple of years, but he's also played with a lot of sort of shrug your shoulders types of quarterbacks as well, and just continues to put up numbers. So if that's what Marvin Harrison Jr. ends up being, I'd say that's a pretty good pick. Pretty good pick.
No doubt.
Pretty good pick, James White in the 4th round. Unbelievable value there. If we're talking about making good on your draft status, James White, one of the best all time in Patriots history, one of the best next Pats guests we have. So thanks for being on with us again, bud. This was great.
I appreciate you having me.
Great stuff there from the great James White. Aggressive. That's how he would describe Mike Vrabel as a coach. How do you not like that? Again, really difficult to look at Mike Vrabel's availability and question whether or not he should be the next guy. I will acknowledge that. Getting back to our conversation from a little bit earlier, I think it's going to end up being the loud, talkative, clearly different personality for Bill Belichick. But a player's coach in a different way compared to Mike Vrabel as well is Jerod Mayo. You get a lot of players in that Patriots locker room talking about how they are prepared by Jerod Mayo, how they are motivated by him. And really, a lot of them give him credit for the defensive plans that they've been given. He's in the front of that room. He is running those defensive meetings. Bill Belichick is not in those defensive meetings. He spent a lot of time with the offense over the course of the last couple of years. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to suggest that Bill Belichick was a staple in defensive meetings, going all the way back to the early 2000s when they had great defenses and Romeo Crennel was their defensive coordinator. But just as Crennel ran those meetings, Jerod Mayo's running those meetings. And he and Steve Belichick have a large say in how things play out defensively week to week for what was a really good defense that lost arguably its 2 best defensive players early in the year. And again, we just rattled off the EPA per play ranking. They were 8th this year. I'm sure there's a number of different categories we could rattle off where they ended up being top 10. So you get an X's and O's person. You get somebody who is accustomed to relating to today's athlete. You get someone who understands markets. He worked in the financial world after his playing days. And you have somebody who can get in front of a room before an entire team, before a 53-man roster and an assembled coaching staff, and bring to that position a level of gravitas that some non-players, I think, really have to work for. I should say non-former players. It's only natural in some ways, and I guess it should be assumed maybe if you were to sit down and think about it for some time, but I've been told by a number of people over the years that not only does being a former player have its advantages in the coaching world, but it can also lead to sometimes some insecurity when there are people on the same staff who don't have that kind of background. And maybe that's in some ways what led to some of the reporting we heard about Jerod Mayo just a few weeks ago, where he's been rubbing people the wrong way. There's, I don't know if intimidation is the right word, because I really don't feel as though that's what's been felt at Gillette Stadium when it comes to people interacting with and having relationships with Jerod Mayo. But there's something that the former players have that the non-former players don't. I think it would be a benefit whether it's Mike Vrabel or Jerod Mayo as next Patriots head coach. I think it's going to go a long way in helping either of those guys succeed if and when they get to New England. Again, betting favorite, in my opinion, should be Jerod Mayo, but we'll see how it all plays out. It's never not interesting. It is never not interesting. And don't I know that we have only gotten toe deep into the offseason waters. We've got mock drafts to get to. Hopefully everybody out there has been watching their Jaden Daniels tape, because, oh boy, that's exciting with the Patriots sitting there at the number 3 overall pick. We'll be talking plenty of draft, plenty of free agency. We are planning. NBC Sports Boston is sending myself, the Skull Crusher, John Henry, Tom Curran, Michael Hawley, Mike Felger. We're going to have a number of people out there in Las Vegas for the week leading up to the Super Bowl. So we got a lot of great things planned there. Hopefully going to get a lot of great guests for the next Pats podcast. Again, we'll be talking all the normal offseason stuff, draft, free agency, etc. But we're going to be talking some coaches too. Where's Bill Belichick end up? Who ends up taking over for the New England Patriots? A lot of meat on that bone. We're going to start gnawing on it. We're already gnawing on it. Gnawing. I'm going to go work on my pronunciation exercises as a professional podcaster, and hopefully next week I'll be much better. We'll talk to you then.